Jia Kim stood at the back of the combat training hall, her hands balled into fists at her sides. Her dark eyes followed every move of the alien students as they practiced their fighting forms. The blue-skinned, four-armed combat instructor Dorothal moved between the students, giving praise and making corrections, but he never came to Jia. He never even looked her way. 3 weeks had passed since Jia had been told she could only watch the combat class. 3 weeks of sitting on the sidelines while her classmates learned the skills that could save their lives one day. Humans are too fragile, Instructor Dorothal had said with a dismissive wave of his upper right hand. Your bones break easily, your skin tears. You have no natural armor, it would be unsafe to let you participate. Jia had tried to argue. She had shown him her perfect scores on all the written tests. She had even offered to sign extra safety waivers. But his mind was made up. The real reason hung in the air, unspoken but clear. Humans were new to the Galactic Defense Academy. They were outsiders, and not everyone believed they belonged. A loud thud pulled Jia from her thoughts. One of the six-legged Vornax students had been thrown to the mat. The Vornax got back up with 5 of its legs, the 6th held carefully off the ground. Take a break, Clinty, said Dorothal. That's how injuries happen. Jia watched as the Vornax limped away. The injured leg would heal in hours. Vornax were known for their quick healing. Meanwhile, the class continued. Did you see that pathetic display? Jia turned to find Makval, the head combat instructor, standing beside her. His gray, stone-like skin was creased in a frown. Unlike Dorothal, who merely looked down on humans, Makval seemed to actively dislike them. If a Vornax can't handle basic training, imagine what would happen to a human, Makval said, his voice like gravel. Your kind doesn't belong in combat. Roles. Jia bit her tongue. She had learned that arguing only made things worse. Nothing to say. Makval's mouth stretched in what might have been a smile. Good. Know your place, human. Stick to communications or support roles where you won't get hurt. He walked away, leaving Jia seething. After class, Jia headed to the academy library. She found a quiet corner and pulled up her test results on her datapad. Top scores in combat, theory, tactical analysis, and even alien physiology. She had worked harder than anyone to prove herself. Don't let them get to you. Jia looked up to see Sunmi, another human student from Earth's Korean region. Sunmi was training in medical sciences, but she and Jia had become friends during orientation. Easy for you to say, Jia replied. Nobody questions whether humans can be doctors. Sunmi sat down across from Jia. Have you tried talking to Dean Santhor? He's supposed to ensure fair treatment for all species. Jia sighed. The Dean trusts his instructors, and on paper the ban makes sense. Humans do lack natural defenses compared to other species. But we have other strengths, Sunmi argued. We're adaptable, creative, and we can endure more than they think. Jia's datapad pinged with a notification. It was her weekly schedule update. Combat theory, pass. Combat practical, restricted. Something inside Jia hardened. She closed her datapad with a sharp click. I'm tired of being treated like I'm made of glass, she said. If they won't teach me, I'll find another way to learn. Sunmi looked worried. What are you planning to do? Jia stood up, her mind racing with possibilities. I don't know yet, but I'm going to show them exactly what a fragile human can do. As she left the library, Jia didn't notice Instructor Tae-Ho Lee watching her from between the shelves. The older human instructor's eyes followed her with interest, seeing something in the young cadet that reminded him of himself 20 years ago, when he'd first had to prove that humans belonged among the stars. The small room that Jia shared with Sunmi was just big enough for a desk, 2 beds, and a small sitting area. Tonight, Jia had moved the furniture to the sides to create an open space in the middle. She stood in this cleared area, breathing deeply as she moved through a series of fighting stances. Sweat dripped down her face as she punched the air, kicked and twisted in smooth motions. She had been at it for 2 hours. Her muscles burned, but she pushed on. The door slid open. Jia froze mid-kick. Don't stop because of me, Sunmi said, walking in with her medical texts under one arm. I've seen you doing this every night for the past week. Jia lowered her leg and wiped her forehead. I have to practice somehow. Sunmi set her books down and watched as Jia returned to her exercises. Those aren't the moves Dorothal teaches in class. No, Jia said between breaths. I found old Earth combat videos in the library database. No one has looked at them in years. Sunmi sat on her bed. You really won't give up, will you? Would you? Jia stopped and looked at her friend. Humans have only been in the Galactic Confederation for 30 years. We're still proving ourselves. If I accept being left out of combat training, I'm letting down every human who comes after me. You're not the only one facing this, Sunmi said quietly. Have you met Hyun from engineering? Jia shook her head. He's another Korean human. His professors won't let him work on the advanced drive systems. They say human hands aren't steady enough for the precise work. Jia frowned. That's ridiculous. Exactly, Sunmi said. Just like saying humans are too fragile for combat training. Thought struck Jia. Does he accept it? Sunmi smiled. No. He practices in the engineering lab after hours. The cleaning robots caught him once, but Professor Jin, the only human teacher in engineering, covered for him. Jia thought about instructor. Taeho Lee from xenobiology. Maybe there were allies she hadn't considered. I want to meet Hyun, Jia said. The next day, Sunmi introduced Jia to Hyun Park at lunch. He was tall with broad shoulders and a serious face. Sunmi told me about your combat class problem, Hyun said. I have a similar issue in engineering. They found a quiet corner of the dining hall to talk. What are you going to do about it? Jia asked. Hyun glanced around to make sure no one was listening. I'm building my own version of the drive system in secret. When it works, they won't be able to ignore my abilities. That's brave, Jia said. But what if you get caught? Worth the risk, Hyun said firmly. My parents worked hard to get me. Here, I won't waste this chance. Jia nodded. She understood that feeling well. What about you? Hyun asked. Training alone in your room won't be enough to change their minds. I know, Jia admitted. I need a way to show what I can do. Hyun thought for a moment. Maybe we can help each other. I could use someone to test my theories on human reflexes. And I might be able to build you some training equipment. A human alliance? Jia smiled. I like that. As they talked, a shadow fell across their table. They looked up to see Instructor Taeho standing there. May I join you, he asked. The three students exchanged nervous glances. Had he overheard them? Taeho sat down without waiting for an answer. I couldn't help noticing you three talking. It's good to see human students supporting each other. We were just discussing classes, Sunmi said quickly. Taeho nodded slowly. Of course. Though if you were discussing other topics, I might have some information that could help. Jia met his eyes. What kind of information? Did you know, Taeho said quietly, that the academy has rules that are very old? Rules that even the instructors may have forgotten? What rules? Hyun asked. Taeho smiled. Come to my office tomorrow after last bell. I think it's time someone told you about the academy's challenge system. As he walked away, Jia felt a spark of hope for the first time in weeks. Maybe there was a way forward, after all. The next day, Jia, Sunmi, and Hyun stood outside Instructor Taeho's office. The door was made of real wood, a rare sight on the space station that housed the Galactic Defense Academy. Should we knock? Sunmi whispered. Before Jia could answer, the door swung open. Taeho stood there with a smile. Right on time, he said. Come in. The office was small but neat. Old paper books lined the walls. A stone carving of Earth sat on the desk. Please sit, Taeho said, pointing to 3 chairs. Once they were seated, Taeho pulled a large old book from his shelf. He set it on the desk with a thud. This, he said, is the complete Academy rulebook, the original version from 400 years ago. I thought all rules were digital now, Hyun said. They are. Taeho nodded, but not all the old rules made it into the new system. Some were forgotten. He opened the book carefully and turned to a marked page. Section 37, Rule 12. The Right of Challenge. Gia leaned forward to read the faded text. It says any cadet who is denied training may challenge the decision through direct demonstration of skills. She read aloud. Exactly, Tejo said. In simple terms, if an instructor says you can't do something, you have the right to challenge them to prove that you can. You mean like a fight? Sunmi asked, concerned. Not necessarily, it depends on the skill in question. Tejo looked at Gia. In your case, yes, it would be a combat demonstration. Gia's heart beat faster. I could challenge Instructor Dorothal to a match? You could, Tejo said. But I wouldn't recommend it, not yet. Why not? Gia asked. Because you'd lose, Tejo said bluntly. Dorothal has been training for decades. You need time to prepare. Hyun spoke up. Would this work for engineering too? The same principle applies, Tejo said. You could challenge your instructor to prove your abilities with the drive systems. The three students looked at each other, hope and worry on their faces. Why are you telling us this? Sunmi asked. Won't you get in trouble? Tejo was quiet for a moment. 20 years ago, I was like you, the first human to teach at the academy. Many thought I didn't belong here. He touched the stone earth on his desk. I had to fight for my place. Now it's your turn. But how do we prepare? Gia asked. I can't learn enough on my own to beat Dorothal. You won't be on your own, Tejo said. I'll help you train, and you three will help each other. Hyun nodded. I can build training equipment that simulates alien fighting styles. And I can help with understanding alien physiology, Sunmi added. Where they're strong, where they're weak. Gia felt a surge of determination. How do we start the challenge process? Tejo pulled out a blank form. With this, the official challenge request, once filed, it cannot be denied without breaking academy law. How long do we have to prepare? Gia asked. 2 weeks from filing the request, Tejo said. Use that time wisely. Gia took a deep breath. I want to do it. Tejo handed her the form. Are you sure? Once this begins, there's no turning back. If you lose, it could make things worse. If I do nothing, nothing will change, Gia said firmly. She took the form. As she filled it out, Tejo spoke quietly. There's one more thing you should know. Word of this will spread quickly. Some will support you, others will mock you. Be prepared. Let them mock, Hyun said. They've been doing it anyway. Gia signed her name at the bottom of the form, a small act that felt enormous. It's done, she said. Tejo took the form. I'll file this tomorrow morning. Your training begins tonight. Agree? They left the office. Gia felt both terrified and excited. She had just taken her first real step toward proving what humans could do. Behind them, Tejo watched with pride. These young humans reminded him so much of himself, and they had no idea what they were truly capable of. Word of Gia's challenge spread through the academy like fire. By lunchtime the next day, everyone knew. As Gia walked into the dining hall, all eyes turned to her. There she is, someone whispered. The human who thinks she can fight Dorothal. A group of alien students laughed. Gia kept her head high and found her usual table where Sunmi and Hyun waited. Everyone's talking about it, Sunmi said as Gia sat down. Good, Gia replied, though her stomach was tight with worry. Hyun pushed a data pad across the table. I've been studying Dorothal species. The Quarren have 4 arms, which gives them advantages in close combat. Gia looked at the information. They're also stronger than humans. Yes, Hyun agreed. But they're slow to change direction. Their joints don't bend the way ours do. That could be useful, Gia said, thinking of ways to use that weakness. A shadow fell across their table. They looked up to see Dorothal standing there, all 4 of his arms crossed over his chest. So, he said, his voice cold, you filed a challenge against me. The dining hall went quiet. Everyone was watching. Gia stood up. Though Dorothal was a full head taller, she met his gaze. Yes, sir, according to Academy Rule 3712. A rule no one has used in 100 years, Dorothal said. Do you really think you can beat me, human? I think I deserve the chance to try, Gia answered. Dorothal made a sound that might have been a laugh. Very well, I accept your challenge. 2 weeks from today in the main training hall. He leaned closer. I will not go easy on you because you are human. I wouldn't want you to, Gia said. Dorothal walked away, the dining hall filled with excited chatter. That was brave, Sunmi said when Gia sat back down. Or stupid, Gia muttered. I have 2 weeks to prepare for a fight I'll probably lose. Not. If we help you, Hyun said. Meet me in Lab 4 after your last class. Later that day, Gia found Hyun in the small engineering lab. He had built what looked like 4 mechanical arms attached to a training dummy. What is this? Gia asked. Your new training partner, Hyun said proudly. It mimics Quarren fighting patterns. It's not perfect, but it should help. Gia touched one of the mechanical arms. This is amazing, Hyun. Consider it my contribution, he said. Now you can practice against a 4-armed opponent. The door opened and Taeho walked in. Good work, Hyun. This will be useful. Taeho turned to Gia. Are you ready to begin real training? Gia nodded. Yes, sir. Then let's start with what humans do best, Taeho said. Adaptation. For the next hour, Taeho taught Gia how to move against a 4-armed opponent. He showed her how to use the Quarren's size against them, how to stay mobile, and how to strike where they were vulnerable. Quarrens rely on strength and reach, Taeho explained. You need to use speed and flexibility. Gia practiced against Hyun's machine until her muscles ached. When she finally stopped, she was dripping with sweat. Not bad for day 1, Taeho said. But we have much more to do. Will it be enough? Gia asked. That depends, Taeho said. What advantage do humans have that other species don't? Gia thought about it. We're adaptable. Yes, Taeho nodded. But there's something else. He pointed to her head. Humans can think differently. We can see patterns and create new solutions. When a Quarren learns to fight, they follow centuries of tradition. You can create something they've never seen. Gia understood. I need my own fighting style. Exactly, Taeho said. One that uses human strengths against Quarren weaknesses. As they left the lab, Sunmi was waiting outside. I've been studying Quarren medical data, she said. I know where they're most vulnerable. Gia smiled at her friends. For the first time, she felt like she might have a chance. Same time tomorrow? Hyun asked. And every day until the challenge, Gia replied. I'm going to need all the help I can get. The 2 weeks passed quickly. Gia trained every day until her body ached. She practiced against Hyun's machine until she could predict its movements. She studied Quarren fighting styles until they filled her dreams. The day of the challenge arrived. The main training hall was packed with students and teachers. No one wanted to miss the human who dared to challenge a combat instructor. Gia stood in a small room off the main hall, trying to calm her racing heart. Are you ready? Sunmi asked, helping Gia stretch. As ready as I'll ever be, Gia said. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook slightly. Hyun entered the room with Taeho behind him. The whole academy is out there, Hyun said. Even Dean Xanthor came to watch. Gia's stomach tightened. No pressure then. Taeho put a hand on her shoulder. Remember what we practiced. Don't try to match Dorothal's strength. Use your speed and flexibility. And don't forget the weak spot under his lower left arm, Sunmi added. The nerve cluster there is exposed. A bell rang, calling the competitors to the floor. It's time, Taeho said. Gia took a deep breath and walked into the hall. The crowd's noise hit her like a wave. In the center of the room was a large mat where Dorothal waited. His blue skin gleamed under the lights. All 4 of his arms were loose at his sides, ready to fight. Dean Xanthor stood at the edge of the mat. The tall, thin alien raised a hand, and the room went quiet. We are here to witness a challenge under Rule 37.12, the dean announced. Cadet Gia Kim challenges Instructor Dorothal to prove her right to join combat training. He turned to Gia. Are you certain you wish to proceed, Cadet? Yes, Dean, Gia said firmly. The dean nodded. The rules are simple. This is a demonstration. Match, not a fight to harm. Points are scored for clean strikes and proper technique. The match ends when one competitor reaches 10 points or cannot continue. Dorothal smiled, showing pointed teeth. This will be quick. Gia said nothing. She moved to her position on the mat and bowed as was customary. Begin, the dean called. Dorothal moved quickly for his size. All four arms swung at Gia in complex patterns she had studied. But knowing and facing were different things. She barely dodged the first attacks, the crowd murmured. Some laughed. They expected her to fall quickly. Dorothal pressed forward, confident. Gia retreated, watching his movements. She remembered Tai Ho's words. Let him think he has the advantage. Dorothal struck with his upper right arm. Gia ducked under it and slipped past his guard. She struck the nerve cluster Sunmi had identified. Dorothal grunted in surprise. Point to Cadet Kim, the dean announced. The crowd went silent. No one had expected that. Dorothal's eyes narrowed. He attacked again, more carefully this time. Gia avoided most blows but took a hit to her shoulder. The force of it sent her stumbling. Point to Instructor Dorothal. The match continued. Dorothal scored 3 more points quickly. His greater reach and strength were clear advantages. Gia was breathing hard, but she didn't give up. Using the moves Tai Ho had taught her, she scored 2 more points by targeting Dorothal's weak spots. The score stood at 4-3 in Dorothal's favor. The crowd was no longer laughing. Many were watching, with real interest now. As the match went on, Gia's human endurance began to show. While Dorothal's movements slowed slightly, she kept her pace. She scored another point, tying the match 4-4. Dorothal's face showed surprise and something else, respect. He hadn't expected this level of skill from a human. In the final exchange, Dorothal used a complex four-armed grapple that Gia couldn't escape. He scored the winning point 10-7. Match to Instructor Dorothal, the dean announced. Gia stood tall despite her loss. She had lasted much longer than anyone expected and scored 7 points against a combat master. Dorothal approached her and bowed. You fought well, Cadet Kim. Thank you, Instructor, Gia said, returning the bow. The dean stepped forward. Most impressive, Cadet. You have shown remarkable skill for someone with no formal training. Does this mean I can join the combat class now? Gia asked. The dean hesitated. I will consider it. First, I would like to see how you fare against one more instructor. Another challenge? Gia asked, surprised. Yes, the dean said, against head instructor Makval. Makval, Gia repeated, her voice barely a whisper. The stone-skinned head instructor was known for his harsh training methods and his dislike of humans. The dean nodded. He has requested the honor. Makval stepped forward. His gray, rocky skin looked hard as steel under the bright lights. He was shorter than Dorothal, but much wider, built like a small mountain. I accept your challenge, human, Makval said, though Gia hadn't actually challenged him. In 1 week's time. Gia looked at Tai Ho, who gave a small nod. I accept, she said. Makval's mouth twisted into what might have been a smile. Good. But let's make this interesting. The crowd went quiet again. If you lose, Makval said, all humans will be restricted from combat training. Not just you, but every human cadet at the academy. Gasps came from the crowd. Several human students looked at Gia with horror. That's not fair, Sunmi said, stepping forward. She's only fighting for herself. Life isn't fair, Makval replied. The battlefield isn't fair. If humans want to prove they belong in combat roles, let them prove it through her. The dean frowned. That is a heavy condition, Instructor Makval. It is my right as the challenge party to set terms, Makval said, unless she's not confident in human abilities. It was a trap, and Gia knew it. Refuse, and she admitted humans weren't good enough. Except, and she risked the future of all human cadets. And if I win? Gia asked. Mokval's rocky eyebrows rose. If you win, which you won't, all restrictions on humans in any training program will be lifted. Permanently. The hall erupted in excited talk. The stakes had just become enormous. I accept your terms, Gia said before she could second-guess herself. As the crowd dispersed, human cadets gathered around Gia. Some looked worried, others angry. How could you risk all of us? A tall human boy demanded. She didn't have a choice. Hyun defended her. Mokval set her up. Taeho raised his hands. What's done is done. Now we must prepare. Back in the small room, Gia sat with her head in her hands. What have I done? You stood up to a bully, Sunmi said, putting an arm around her friend. Mokval is different from Dorothal, Taeho warned. His species, the Granath, have stone-like skin that's difficult to hurt. They're also gravity manipulators. Gravity manipulators? Gia looked up. What does that mean? They can make themselves heavier or lighter at will, Taeho explained. It's why Mokval can move so quickly despite his size. He can reduce his own weight to almost nothing. Gia felt sick. How do I fight that? We'll find a way, Hyun said. He was already making notes on his datapad. I'll build new training equipment, something that can simulate gravity changes. Over the next few days, word of the challenge spread beyond the academy. Other schools in the Galactic Confederation sent messages of support or criticism. Some saw Gia as a hero standing up for human rights. Others thought she was foolish to risk so much. The pressure weighed on Gia. Each day, more human cadets came to watch her train. Some offered help. Others just stared, their futures now tied to hers. Hyun worked day and night on a new training system. He rigged small gravity plates to a practice dummy that could suddenly become heavy or light. It's not perfect, he told Gia, but it might help you prepare. Taeho taught her new techniques designed to counter the Granath fighting style. They rely on sudden weight changes to throw opponents off balance. You must learn to anticipate these shifts. At night, Gia lay awake worrying. The stakes were too high. One mistake and she would close doors for humans for years to come. You should eat, Sunmi said at breakfast, pushing food toward Gia. You need your strength. Gia picked at her food. What if I'm not good enough? Sunmi squeezed her hand. You are, and you're not fighting for just yourself anymore. You're fighting for all of us. That makes you stronger. Gia nodded, trying to believe it. In 5 days, she would face Mokval. In 5 days, she would either make history or become a cautionary tale. 3 days before the challenge, Gia was in the small training room with Hyun's gravity-shifting dummy. Her muscles ached, and her reflexes were slowing from exhaustion. Again, Taeho said, try to predict the weight shift. Gia wiped sweat from her eyes and faced the dummy. Hyun controlled it from a small panel, making it suddenly heavy then light without warning. Gia tried to anticipate the changes, but was knocked down again when the dummy became unexpectedly heavy. I can't do this, she said, sitting on the floor. No matter how much I practice, I can't predict when Mokval will change his weight. Taeho helped her up. Perhaps we're approaching this wrong. We can't make you predict the unpredictable. We need a different strategy. The door opened and Sunmi rushed in, her face excited. I found something. She held up her datapad. I've been studying human physiology compared to other species. And? Gia asked, too tired to feel hopeful. Humans have something special, Sunmi said. Something the aliens don't understand. She showed them the screen. It's called the fight or flight response. Taeho's eyes widened. Of course. The emergency reserve. What is it? Gia asked. Sunmi explained. When humans face extreme danger, our bodies release chemicals like adrenaline. These chemicals can make us temporarily stronger, faster, and more resistant to pain. All species have stress responses, Gia said. Not like humans, Sunmi replied. Most alien species evolved to have consistent performance. They don't have the same dramatic boost we get. When a Granith is tired, they stay tired. When a human is pushed to the edge, something inside us can push back. Tejo nodded slowly. I've seen it happen. Humans who lift crushing weights to save loved ones. Mothers who fight off attackers to protect children. Hysterical strength, Sunmi added. It's well documented in human history. Jia frowned. But I can't just make myself produce adrenaline. Maybe you can, Hyun said thoughtfully, if we create the right situation. The next day they tried a new approach. Instead of training Jia to counter Mokval's techniques, they worked on a strategy that would use human physiology to her advantage. The key is to pace yourself, Tejo explained. Make Mokval think he's winning easily. Let him get overconfident. Then, when the moment is right, you push beyond what he thinks you're capable of. Jia practiced the new strategy. She learned to appear more tired than she was, to show fake weaknesses that Mokval might target. She worked on conserving her energy for a final burst of speed and strength. Remember, Sunmi said during a water break, the aliens don't understand human capabilities. They've never had to evolve the same survival mechanisms we did on Earth. Our bodies adapted to outrun predators and overcome larger threats, Tejo added. We can access strength that Mokval doesn't expect. The day before the challenge, all the human cadets at the academy gathered to watch Jia's final training session. They had been skeptical at first, but as they watched her perform, hope began to grow. After the session, a young human cadet approached Jia. My parents said humans were too soft for the academy, she said quietly. They told me to study support roles instead, but watching you makes me think they're wrong. Jia felt the weight of responsibility. What's your name? Min, the girl answered. Well, Min, Jia said, tomorrow we'll find out what humans can really do. That night, Jia couldn't sleep. She lay in bed thinking about all the faces watching her, all the hopes riding on her challenge. Sunmi sat on the edge of her bed. Are you afraid? Sunmi asked. Yes, Jia admitted, but not of losing or getting hurt. What then? I'm afraid of letting everyone down, Jia said. All those other humans counting on me. Sunmi smiled. That's exactly why you won't let us down. That feeling you have? That's another human strength. We fight harder for others than we do for ourselves. Jia realized Sunmi was right. The pressure she felt wasn't just weight. It was fuel. The human capacity to care about others, to fight for them, might be the strongest advantage of all. Tomorrow, Mokval would learn what humans were truly made of. The day of the challenge arrived. The main training hall was packed beyond capacity. Not only was the entire academy present, but officials from the Galactic Confederation had come to watch. This was no longer just a student challenge. It had become a test of human potential. Jia stood in the preparation room, breathing deeply. Her friends surrounded her. Remember the plan, Tejo said. Pace yourself. Make him think you're weaker than you are. Watch for his weight shifts, Hyun added. The signs are subtle. A slight change in his stance before he does it. Sunmi handed Jia a small container of water. Stay hydrated. Human endurance is one of our advantages. A bell rang, calling the competitors to the floor. Jia walked out into the bright lights of the training hall. The crowd's noise washed over her in a wave. At the center of the room, Mokval waited. His stone-like skin seemed even harder today, his body a solid mass of gray rock. Dean Xanthor raised his hands for silence. Today we witness the challenge between Cadet Jia Kim and head instructor Mokval, he announced. The terms have been set. If Cadet Kim wins, all restrictions on human participation in academy programs will be lifted. If instructor Mokval wins, humans will be restricted from combat training. Murmurs ran through the crowd. The stakes were clear to everyone. This match will end when one competitor reaches 15 points or cannot continue, the dean added. Begin when ready. Jia bowed to Mokval. He gave a small nod in return. Begin, the dean called. Mokval moved with surprising speed for his size. One moment he seemed as heavy as a boulder, the next he was light as air, spinning and striking. Jia remembered the plan and focused on defense, not trying to match his speed yet. Makval landed the first blow easily, then the second. By the fifth point, he was smiling. "Is this the best humans can offer?" he asked loudly enough for the crowd to hear. Jia appeared to be tiring already. She let her shoulders slump slightly, her breathing become labored. It wasn't all an act. Makval's blows were powerful. The score reached 8-0. Whispers spread through the crowd. Some human cadets looked down, already accepting defeat. But Sunmi, watching carefully, could see Jia was following the plan perfectly. She wasn't using her full energy yet. She was waiting. At 10-0, Makval became more casual, more showy. He played to the crowd, demonstrating his superiority with flashy moves. Exactly as Jia had hoped. When the score reached 12-0, Makval looked to the dean. "Perhaps we should end this early. The human is clearly outmatched." That was the moment Jia had been waiting for. While Makval's attention was divided, she struck. Fast, precise, to the exact spot Sunmi had identified as vulnerable, the joint where his arm met his shoulder. "Point to Cadet Kim," the dean announced, surprise in his voice. Makval's head snapped back to Jia, his eyes narrowed. He attacked again, but Jia was no longer playing tired. She moved with her full speed now, dodging his strike and landing another blow. "Point to Cadet Kim." The crowd stirred. Human cadet stood up straighter, hope returning. Makval's confidence turned to anger. He attacked more aggressively, using his gravity manipulation to become incredibly heavy. Jia sidestepped, using his momentum against him. 3 more points to Jia. The score was 12-5. Makval's face twisted with fury. He rushed forward, all 4 limbs striking at once. Jia took a hit that sent her sliding across the floor. Pain shot through her side. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. "Point to Instructor Makval," the dean called. 13-5. Jia got to her feet slowly. She felt something strange happening, just as Sunmi had described. Her heart pounded harder. Her vision sharpened. The pain in her side faded. The human emergency response was kicking in. Makval came at her again, expecting to find her weakened. Instead, he met a fighter faster and more focused than before. Jia's movements became a blur. She landed blow after blow, turn 6, 13-7, 13-8. The crowd was on its feet now, shouting and cheering. Human cadets chanted Jia's name. Makval fought desperately, scoring 2 more points. 15-10. Just 1 more point, and he would win. But Jia wasn't done. Something had awakened inside her, the hidden strength humans carried. She fought as if her life depended on it, because in a way the future of humans at the academy did. The score reached 15-14. 1 point would decide everything. The training hall fell silent. Everyone held their breath. The score stood at 15-14, with Makval needing just 1 more point to win. Jia would need to score twice in a row, something no one had ever done against the head instructor. Jia and Makval circled each other. Both were breathing hard. Sweat ran down Jia's face. Makval's stone skin had small cracks from the effort of so many gravity shifts. "Give up, human," Makval said quietly. "You've made your point. No one expected you to get this far. I didn't come this far to give up," Jia replied. Makval attacked, using his favorite move, a sudden increase in weight as he lunged forward. But Jia had been studying this move for days. She sidestepped and used his momentum against him, landing. A precise strike to his side. "Point to Cadet Kim," the dean called. 15-15. The crowd erupted. Human cadets jumped to their feet, cheering wildly. Jia didn't celebrate. She knew the match wasn't over. Makval's eyes blazed with anger. He had never been matched in a challenge before. He rushed forward with all his strength, all 4 limbs striking at once. Time seemed to slow for Jia. She could see each of his movements clearly, as if her mind had sped up. She ducked under his upper arms and twisted past his lower ones. Then, using a move Taeho had taught her, one from ancient earth martial arts, she used Makval's own weight against him. As he shifted to his heaviest form for a powerful blow, she redirected his momentum and sent him crashing to the mat. The sound echoed through the suddenly silent hall. "Point and match to Cadet Jia Kim," the dean announced, his voice filled with amazement. For a moment, no one moved. Then the hall exploded with noise. Human cadets rushed onto the training floor. Sunmi and Hyun reached Jia first, hugging her tightly. Other humans surrounded her, cheering and crying. Mokval got to his feet slowly. His face was unreadable. He walked to where Jia stood and raised his hand for silence. The crowd quieted. "I have been a combat instructor for 40 years, Mokval said, his deep voice carrying across the hall. "I have fought champions from 50 different species." He paused. "Today, I learned something new." He turned to face the dean. "I was wrong. About humans. They do not lack strength. They simply access it differently than we do. Their adaptability and spirit make them formidable fighters." The dean nodded slowly. "As agreed, all restrictions on human participation in academy programs are hereby lifted." More cheers erupted. Dean Xanthor raised his hands again for quiet. "Cadet Kim, you have shown extraordinary skill and courage. In recognition of this, I am appointing you as a student instructor. You will help develop new training methods that incorporate human fighting techniques." Jia's eyes widened in surprise. "Thank you, Dean." As the crowd dispersed, Taeho approached Jia with pride shining in his eyes. "Well done. You've opened doors for generations of humans to come." "I couldn't have done it without all of you," Jia said, looking at her friends. "What will you teach first?" Sunmi asked. Jia smiled. "That strength comes in many forms, and that underestimating someone because they're different is the first step to defeat." 3 months later, Jia stood at the front of the combat training hall. A new class of cadets waited before her. Humans, Quarrens, Granith, Vornax, and a dozen other species. "Welcome to Advanced Adaptive Combat," she said. "In this class, we will learn from each other's strengths and compensate for each other's weaknesses." At the back of the room stood a small Xilaxian cadet, a species known for their fragile bodies but brilliant minds. The Xilaxian looked nervous, clearly expecting to be told they didn't belong in combat training. Jia walked over and smiled. "Everyone belongs here," she said. "Everyone has something to teach and something to learn." She looked out at the mixed class of cadets, then to where Mokval and Dorothal stood watching with newfound respect. "Today we begin a new chapter at the academy," Jia said. "One where we judge each other not by our species or appearance, but by our determination, our adaptability, and our heart." As the class began, Jia knew that this, not the challenge match, was her real victory. Not just proving that humans belonged, but showing that everyone did, each with their own unique strengths to offer.